the the issues of balanced budget, the issue of fiscal responsibility, the issue of raising debt ceilings and unlimited spending and no accountability, and is any of it at all? Again, and I'm hoping that one day you're going to say kind of, or maybe, or possibly, instead of saying no. Is anybody on DC maybe talking a little more now, at least, about balancing budgets and fiscal responsibility? Are we getting there at all, or is this just nobody seems to care?
Republicans are in the House, and some in the Senate, like Rand Paul and some others. But most of Washington is still silent on the idea of balancing budgets. All they're talking about is, can we have more money on the credit card so we can go spend? And look, a couple things. One, how the Democrats always tee this up is, well, we already agreed to the bills. Now we just have to continue to pay them. Okay, first and foremost, for every dollar that comes into the federal government, we spend about $1.30. So there is money to pay Social Security, Medicare, the VA, defense, etc., and even interest on the debt. You can do all those things. What you can't do is all the non-defense discretionary money that the Democrats have plussed up over the past 2.5 years. Because people remember Nancy Pelosi was Speaker of the House during the last 2 years of President Trump, and in some of their spending deals, it increased in part, not nearly what happened under Joe Biden, please understand, but non-defense discretionary went up a little bit. So we're up 30% since COVID-19 started in terms of non-defense discretionary. Some of us are saying, well, why don't we just end the COVID emergencies and go back to 2019, the non-defense discretionary spending levels? Makes sense, right? Yeah. If you raise your spending dramatically because of COVID and COVID's over, then you send your spending back to what you were doing pre-COVID. Makes total sense in the world. Here on Capitol Hill, that idea is met with, it's a gas. Like, what are you doing? What are you talking about? We can't do that. We have to pay the bills. Let me give you a second example. Mm-hmm. The Department of Homeland Security, which, if anybody's paid attention to the southern border for the last 2 years, is not securing the homeland. Yeah. Raising the debt ceiling means paying for the Department of Homeland Security. So why would we expand the credit card to continue to fund the Department of Homeland Security that is not securing the homeland? These are the arguments from the Democrats. Last argument they like to throw out is, you're going to throw the markets into catastrophe if you don't raise the debt ceiling. Now, listen, there are legitimate points about the debt ceiling being needed, not just so Washington can spend, but for the treasury markets themselves, because the treasury markets are based upon treasuries, which the government extends out through bonds, through debt, etc. But here is what the credit rating agencies, the Moody's of the world, here's what they also say about the national debt. They're just as concerned about Washington not having the ability to curtail its spending or be fiscally responsible. So the street, if you will, the markets, if you will, have two concerns. One, will there be this brinksmanship that can throw the treasury markets into disarray? Legitimate concern. But the other concern that they keep saying in every report about the United States credit rating is, will Washington actually be fiscally responsible? And up to this point in time in American history, that answer has been no. So House Republicans and some Senate Republicans, we're committed to being fiscally responsible. If you're asking me for more debt ability, more ability to incur debt, you got to have a plan of what your spending is going to be. This is basic stuff, Drew.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's what's going on from House Republicans on Capitol Hill.
Yeah. And, tell me if this is safe to say, because it's kind of the making of whatever you all make there, sausage, cakes, whatever it is in D.C., and the expressions that people use. But, the one thing that's always frustrating to me is what it appears to be is that every single time you get these nudges of or even these large lumps of spending that we see year after year, and how some Republicans go along with it, and they end up signing off and helping Democrats to pass these astronomical spending bills. And once that's locked in, that's the game. The game is that every little bit that's given or that is signed off on, or the next time we won't do it, but then you end up doing it, is one that's locked into place. There's never we'll back up away from this, to your point, 2019 levels. No. It's always, once we get that is a lock. And now that becomes the new norm. That spot, that place becomes the new baseline. That's not good policy. That's not how things should be run.
You said it exactly right. What happens here is, and this is really the Democrats and some Republicans, their view are, once you get it into the baseline, nobody brings out a pencil and an eraser and goes backwards and says, okay, let's examine these policies that we did for an emergency period or whatever the case might be. It's time to erase those. I'm going to give you an example. One of the things that was put into several of the Biden packages during the quote unquote pandemic was subsidies for insurance premiums in Obamacare. Mm-hmm. So they voted out and passed, and Biden signed into law, Obamacare subsidies, which is taken actually from Medicare, because the funding stream was from Medicare to Obamacare subsidies. Sorry, senior citizens, the Democrats are the ones who keep cutting Medicare. So that's the truth. They have moved that into Obamacare subsidies. People who are making $100,000 a year are getting Obamacare subsidies. Okay? No, we should be removing that. Right. Second one that happened is the federal government put into place during the pandemic that Medicaid had to be expanded because people obviously weren't working and so on and so forth. So they expanded Medicaid. There is no mechanism for Medicaid to now go back and decide if somebody is now ineligible because they are now back to work. They have actually stopped the states from doing that. So one of the things we're saying is, no, go back to the Medicaid rules pre-pandemic. We're being told that's $100 billion right there. And so these are the types of things that have to occur. The biggest issue, this is why people who support zero-based budgeting, is because once the baseline is set, and I think we're getting CBO baseline numbers next month, all that previous spending, unless it sunsets, which is very rare in Washington, is automatically in the baseline that everybody budgets off of. So they don't just say, hey, let's examine the budget and see which line items we don't need anymore, because that would be smart. What they say is, oh, here's a new number from CBO. Okay, so what do you want to add to this program? What do you want to add to that program? That's what happens here on the Hill, which is why in the budget committee where I sat for my first term, I kept saying, and I'm going to keep bringing it up again till I'm blue in the face, we should be examining the budget functions and figuring out what programs under each function are no longer needed or should be curtailed. Yeah, that's the way you can get up to a number where you can say, okay, well, that's fiscally responsible. Well, okay, I see why we have to increase the debt, because Social Security and Medicare are going to continue to rise as a portion of the debt. Those are the facts. So I see why you make that you make that judgment call, but you're doing it because you have a systematic game plan for how you're going to curtail spending and then put yourself in position to address the debt over the next 20 years. Because, folks, you're going to have to address our debt problems over the next 20 to 30 years. It's becoming almost impossible to balance in 10 years.
Yeah. There are ways to do it. It can be done with bold action and transparency. And again, it's so logical and common sense. And when you have this very thin majority, and hopefully looking forward to very soon the possibility of having something more concrete in a majority, and possibly having the White House and possibly having the Senate. These are the things that are going to not have to be explored, but done, because the exploration has already been done. All the work, all the groundwork is already finished. It's like we already know what to do. Then you have to implement it, even though there are going to be people that are going to demagogue this thing and get all hyperbolic with their statements on media outlets that will say the worst kind of things when it comes to either the debt ceiling, which is kind of like faded a little bit as far as the big hyperbolic, the world's going to sink into the ocean. We're all going to sink into the ocean kind of thing. These attitudes, but when it comes to like auditing the Fed, are we going to do that? Are we going to have that kind of transparency? What about that?
I actually wish we could.
Yeah.
I wish we would.
Yeah.
honestly. But I'm not even sure that topic hasn't even come up on Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
I've not heard it. Nobody's even there.
Right.
I do have a bill about the Fed, and what it would do is it would essentially get rid of one of the Fed's mandates when it comes to setting interest rates.
Mm-hmm.
My bill says you get rid of full employment as one of the two rules that they follow,
Mm-hmm.
because they're actually in opposition to each other. All thing the Fed should be doing is price stability.
Yeah.
That is it.
Yeah.
That should be their mission. Their mantra is price stability. It shouldn't be full employment. That's a Jimmy Carter era rule. Jimmy Carter obviously didn't know what he was doing. And so that's what we should be doing when it comes to the Fed.
Right.
One thing I want to point out, because obviously now the media is they are constantly talking about Social Security and Medicare.
Right.
Oh, well, Republicans cut Social Security and Medicare. Nobody's talking about cutting Social Security and Medicare. But people need to understand what the dynamics are. Number one, there is no plan by anybody on Capitol Hill that cuts benefits for current retirees in Medicare and in Social Security. But in the law, there are automatic benefit cuts if the programs go insolvent. This is the point I was trying to make to Joy Reid, and she just didn't want to listen.
Right.
And obviously now the Wall Street Journal is telling her that she is wrong and I'm right, but we already knew that. There are benefit cuts in the law if the programs go insolvent. So the position of Republicans is, look, we're not going to deal with Social Security and Medicare right now. That's not the issues that are really relevant today, but we are going to have to deal with them. Make no mistakes. So we might as well start talking about it now, because if you reform the programs, you can maintain benefit levels for current retirees. Grandma will not be thrown off the cliff. As a matter of fact, grandma will be protected from the automatic benefit cuts that are in the law. But you have to do the work, and you can actually preserve the programs for the future and also give potentially Americans the ability to have other options than just Social Security and Medicare for their retirement. Those things are definitely possible. They can be done.
Right.
But we are in this dogma environment with media where if you dare to utter the word Social Security, automatically the Paul Ryan ads of throwing Granny off the cliff come back, and everybody just gets into the fetal position.
Yeah, they lose
because
their
they're
mind.
afraid of the blowback.
Yeah.
They lose their mind over it.
Yeah, they do. Congressman Byron Donalds joining us on Daybreak, 92.5 Fox News. I go up to the break room a little earlier to grab a cup of coffee, and I'm looking at the TV, and you've got the what is it, the CVS morning talking heads, whatever, and the headline, the big top of the hour story is this crisis, this humanitarian crisis in the state of Florida and in the Keys, and these boats from Haiti and from Cuba, and the humanitarian crisis that is happening. And I'm like, hold on a second. Okay, can we get to the fundamentals of maybe why a lot of this is happening right now? And again, it takes us back to what? It takes us back to the border. It takes us back to what other people are hearing across the globe with regard to how easy it is, what a great time it is to make their way to this country. Look, the humanitarian issue should be one that's discussed, but we should also talk about some of the other things that we're hearing about. And I just want to make sure I'm not mistaken about this, because I'm hearing some of these 23 numbers, these first month's numbers. 8 terrorists stopped at the border, something, or maybe it's more than that. Some of the 6,000 criminals arrested at the border. Am I right about these numbers? I mean, is this what's going on right now? Yes.
That's as I understand them. That is correct. And it's sad. I mean, look here again. Joe Biden he is on purpose not secured the border. This is all on purpose. Yeah. It's tough because, the media doesn't take this thing seriously.
Nope.
The White House last March of 2021, they were saying when they were caught with kids in cages, because that did happen, everybody, that they told the media, we're going to be transparent. We're going to be transparent. But Joe Biden specifically said, but give us a moment to get things in order and we'll be fully transparent with you. Yeah, the transparency never came. All that did was buy them time to move people all across the country.
Right.
The numbers are real of what's happening at the southern border, which is why you have Republicans who are saying, look, why would we even continue to fund this thing if it can't even do its basic job?
Yeah.
It's a serious problem for the country. And the part of criminals coming across people on the terrorist watch list, that's the peak, but you're missing the iceberg. The iceberg is all of the people who've come into the country who are now absorbing social services
Right.
at local government levels and at state government levels.
Yep. Yeah.
It is pushing on the amount of funding necessary, where now you have the blue city mayors and the blue state governors are begging the federal government for more money because they need help. And it's all of this is not you don't have to go through this if you simply secure the border.
Right. Yeah, and
You secure that, it takes care of a bunch of problems.